Hello, I'm Brent Campbell, and I'm really excited to be sharing with you a video I've wanted to make for 2 years. My brother is also a lifelong car guy. I always enjoy his perspective, and I think that you're going to as well. While some brothers talk sports, my brother and I always talked cars. I'm not sure if he got me into cars or if I got him into cars. Whatever it is, I think we just got each other into cars. As it happens, we tend to like a lot of the same cars for many of the same reasons. His first cool car, as he will tell you in the video, was a 2004 Mini Cooper S he called Spike. The second cool car was the car that I had also always lusted after and had made my dream car. It's a 2004 E46 M3. And then he got this beast, the E60 M5. It's a 2008. And today he drives a secure orange F82 M4. He's gotten a kick out of all of the videos that I've been posting on YouTube, and I asked him if he wanted to do one, and he said yes. I was surprised, actually. I didn't think he would want to. But out we went, and he talked about his life's perspective on cars, how he got into cars, why he fell in love with BMW, why he had to have the M3 and the M5 and the M4, and starting with his little Mini Cooper. It was very cool to hear him tell these stories, things that I hadn't even heard before. So he gave us about 45 minutes where he took us out in the M4. He drove it fast. You couldn't really tell in the video, but it still sounds cool, and it's just great to get his point of view on what it's like to drive it. So I think you're really going to enjoy this video. It's taken me a long time to edit through all the footage and get things in a way that I think really works. It's a long video, but there's a lot of information in it. There's a lot of great perspective, and I think you'll have fun. I had a lot of fun making this, so enjoy. One more thing, there's a lot of content here. I'm thinking I might actually break some of this up later in snippets that talk about specific topics that David covered here. So be on the lookout for that. I'll probably outline this in the description. Might be a more useful way, because I can't assume that everybody here wants to sit through a 30-minute long video. David, we're in your M4 right now.
So the M4, so obviously it's newer. BMW engineers have perfected everything, or they have at least come closer to their pursuit of perfection. What I would say is that the M4 is just a beautiful marriage of form and function. I feel that it's beautiful to look at. I think it's a sculpture driving down the road. I think it's the prettiest M car. I'm biased because I'm driving it, but I do think it's gorgeous. It's not as mean as the M5. It's not as, how would I describe the M3? The M3 is aggressive, but it's also refined and fairly understated. I mean, this thing, it's orange. You know, people see it a mile away, but I think it's beautiful. So it manages to marry, I think, the form of a beautiful sports car with an awful lot of power that's easily accessible. So I think it's just a brilliant balance of what the M3 offered and what the M5 offered. I wouldn't say that it's better than the M3 or the M5, but it's newer, it's refined. I'm having a heck of a lot of fun with it. I have absolutely no interest in getting rid of it, though I will say I lust after the M2 quite a bit, at least what I've seen of it. But let's go. And we're at 105, like that. Wow. So it's just a lot of fun. It's fast, it's quick. easy to control the power, which I really appreciate. Even with traction control off, I mean, you can lose control of people. I mean, there's all kinds of, you know, pictures on the internet of people that have lost control of their M4s. But I think if you have even a bit of driving experience and don't do anything too stupid, you can even control it with traction control off. You can lose the back end and still manage to get the car to go where you want it to go.
Throws you around. Of course, that doesn't come out on the video at all.
But, I mean, do you feel it? I mean, it's like you're in a time warp.
Well, and the instantaneous shifts.
Yeah. It's just such fun. When I drive this car and I just am really flooring it, it's almost like that trick that sometimes directors do when they're making a film where it's like you're pulling out at the same time as you're going forward. And it feels like a time warp.
Yeah.
I just love this car's acceleration. It's just so much fun. It's very fun. Very, very fun.
And basically you just have crazy power instantly wherever you are.
Wherever you are.
Yeah. What was it? 226 horsepower and 3,000 RPM?
That's right. The first job that I got that ever paid me anything, I was thinking about what car do I really want to drive. And about that time, the remake of the Italian Job came out. And the Mini Coopers in that car, in that movie, were really used to great effect. And so I went to the Mini dealership in Atlanta and got behind the wheel of one to test drive. And honest to God, the salesperson was in the back seat. My friend was in the passenger seat. And the salesperson said, not only do I want you to drive it like you stole it, but I want you to see if you can lose control of it. So I took that as a challenge. It was a Mini Cooper S 2004. And anyway, I drove the snot out of that thing on that test drive. It was a manual transmission. I was having a blast. It was on rails. I mean, I could make it lose traction a little bit, but it was the most fun I've had since the days of go-karts. And so that Mini Cooper S was in the first new car I ever bought. And so I loved it. I had it for 5 years. I called it Spike, which I think was a perfect name. It just captured its personality.
Oh, it did.
And loved that car, drove it hard. It never gave me a minute of trouble. And still to this day, I've had an E46 M3, I've had an E60 M5, and now I've got an F82 M4. And there's still a part of me that pines for that Mini Cooper.
Yeah.
It was just so much fun.
Yeah.
Not nearly as powerful as these cars, but just a blast to drive. You felt it completely.
Well, it was a very big deal when you got it.
Yes, it was.
It was a big investment.
It was. Even though, I mean, it wasn't terribly expensive in terms of like the way M cars.
No.
But it was my first job, and
yeah, it was a big deal at the time.
Well, I think my car payment was more than my rent, to put it that way. So I've got my priorities straight. But anyway, that car, oh, I loved that car.
Yeah.
It was just so much fun. And back then there weren't too many of them on the road, so everywhere I went, you know, people were like, oh man, it was red with a black top. And I live in Athens, Georgia, and everything's red and black here. So people were like, you know, go Bulldogs. Everywhere I went, people would come look at it. Because again, now they're all over the place, but back then they sure weren't.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway, it was. Yeah. In fact, for a long time, it was the only Mini in town.
Yeah.
So anyway, a lot of fun.
Well, and you kept it shiny. Took really good care of it.
It lived outside. I didn't have a garage back then, but I washed it probably every 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
And waxed it, honestly, probably every couple of weeks. I was pretty obsessive about it. Here we go. Hold on. Yeah,
I don't know how well that came through because I turned it around and I can't see what I'm filming.
Yeah, it grips. It just grips beautifully. And that's the thing about this car is with traction control on, you can make it do things you probably shouldn't do.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well,
yeah.
The traction control, I guess, you know, without it, you wouldn't be able to keep it on the road.
Well, that is true. And when you take traction off, what's great about the M4 with traction off is that it will absolutely kick back. It'll kick out. You can fishtail with great ease. You can drift with ease. But what's so great about this car is it's really controllable. Here, we'll have fun here.
All right.
It's really controllable even when you've lost traction.
Yeah.
You can still tell it where you want it to go.
Well, I'm impressed. It's So what do you think about the way it sounds?
I love the way it sounds. Oh, there's a police car right in front of us. We better slow down. I love the way it sounds personally. It is nowhere near as resonant, as deep as the M5 was. The M5 sounds like, I mean, a symphony of badass when you turn that thing on. I've never heard an engine that sounds better when you start it than
Even
the
the
M5.
M3?
Even the M3. I think the M5 just, it's so throaty and guttural. What I would say about this, and I know a lot of people, especially when this car first came out, were complaining that they have the sound of the engine piped in through the speakers. In all honesty, I can't really hear that. It doesn't sound artificial to me. I don't know how it sounds to you. To me, I don't really hear it.
No, it sounds pretty normal and natural to me. I drove Jack's i8.
Right.
I did a review of that. And definitely something was piped in because it actually has a Mini Cooper engine in it.
Interesting.
With a battery-powered electric motor.
Interesting. Well, and so in a car like that that's going to be fairly quiet, and I guess they want to make it sound bigger and better.
Oh, it sounds amazing. But you're not complaining about it either. You like the way it sounds.
Yeah, to me this car sounds really good. You know, I don't love the way it sounds when I start it up. A cold start does not sound good on this car. It's not impressive. It sounds a little bit tinny. It sounds a little bit light. But once it's warmed up and everything's opened up and you give it some gas, it sounds beautiful.
Yeah.
Again, nowhere near as rumbly and angry as the M5, but it still sounds beautiful anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of disappointing, I think, in the M5 because it seems so subdued, and a lot of people solve that problem by putting on aftermarket exhaust, and
that's right.
That makes a huge difference. But at the same time, it's so loud when you start it up that I think my neighbors dislike me enough already.
Well, we can hear you coming literally 2 blocks away in the M5. I mean, that's not a joke. You can hear you 30 seconds before you show up.
And I'm not revving it, that's for sure, not in your neighborhood.
Right.
So, so that's a challenge. But yeah, I mean, I think most people criticize the way these cars sound on the outside, but on the inside, it's a completely different matter. And I would agree. I mean, I think it sounds great.
Yeah, I think it sounds really good.
Yeah.
The thing that really got me on this car at first, so I had the M5 and they started teasing us with the concept car of the M4. So we knew the M4 was coming, that it was in development. And when I saw the initial concept car, the sort of prototype, it was at one of the Concours d'Elegance. I don't remember which one it was, but it was that golden yellow color, and I mean, it was just a thing of beauty. I had always loved the Phoenix yellow on the E46 M3, and I thought this was an even better kind of yellow color.
Oh, I would agree with that.
It was just beautiful, and so I started looking at it and researching it, and I contacted my BMW dealer and told him I wanted to get on the list, and he said that they were only going to have 2 allocations for the whole year, and that the first one was the one that was already you know, taken basically, and so they said that I could have the second one though, and I had to wait a year to get it because they weren't even in production at that point. But I knew just from the way it looked and the way that they were talking about it, they were estimating it have about 430 horses, and it came close to that. And I just knew it was going to be a perfect mix of the M3 size, but with a bit more power, a bit more punch. The twin turbo, I had some mixed feelings about. I love a naturally aspirated engine. I know you do too. And that is one complaint, I guess, about the way this car sounds, is that when the windows are down and you've got Sport Plus on, that's when the twin turbos are really spooling and you can hear them spool. And some people maybe like that. When I first got the car, I actually thought that a hose was loose. It, to me, felt like something's not quite right here. I've gotten used to it now, but it just sounds fake. But anyway, I've gotten used to it. Keep the windows up most of the time anyway. Anyway, I got the M4, and the minute I drove it, I mean, I was already the owner of it. It hadn't even test driven it before because there weren't any to test drive. And anyway, I knew immediately when I drove it that I was in love, that it looks beautiful. The fit and finish of this car, I mean, the interior is gorgeous. The exterior styling, I think, is the prettiest BMW yet. And so I love the way it looks. I love the way it drives. I really don't have any complaints. To me, it's a great balance of size. I mean, the M2 is pretty great. I'd love it to be as small as the M2, but I didn't have an option for the M2 at the time.
Right.
So this is a little bit smaller than the M5, a little bit more powerful than the M3. I feel like the power works. I can access it so quickly. And as you've pointed out in earlier videos, the torque on this car makes it just a monster until about 120 miles an hour, and I don't go that fast all that often. So anyway,
it is much more usable, that's for sure.
It's just easy access. Anywhere you are in the power band, you've got that power.
Yeah.
And that's very exciting and a lot of fun. You can get into an awful lot of trouble that way.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anybody can argue. I mean, there are a lot of purists among us that prefer the naturally aspirated feel and sound, but there's no question that they made progress by adding 2 turbos. You now have an extraordinary amount of power, and also the E60 M5. Everybody jokes about this. The fuel economy is just laughably bad. And the engineers will tell you that they took the E60 or the S85 engine, the V10 and the E60 M5, as far as they could take a naturally aspirated engine in terms of getting as much power out of an engine block as they could. Now, given the realities that we're all facing with climate change and this and that, we do need to find better ways to extract power out of an engine. So the turbo is progress. All the major OEMs are moving in that direction, I would say, except for Lamborghini. I think they're the one that stands out, and they're managing to do it by shaving weight off of the car. And
these things are pure carbon fiber now.
Yeah, and how much does it cost to build something like that?
Right.
So that's not really practical for regular guys like us.
That's
or
for sure. Yeah,
regular guys like me.
Well, and me, trust me. Yeah, there's no Lamborghini in my future. Good grief, I could sell my house, this car, and everything else, and barely be able to afford it.
So this is a dumb question. What kind of fuel economy do you get?
This is a dumb answer. I have no idea. I've owned this car for 2 years, and I've never even looked. Because...
Quote of the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things that I just, I'm going to drive this car, and I'm going to drive it the way I want it, and luckily it doesn't seem as bad as the M5.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near as bad as the M5.
Right.
But I could not tell you what the gas mileage is on this car.
I kind of employ the same approach with the M3, but it does get decent gas mileage. I mean, it's averaged 18 as long as I've had it.
Yeah.
On the highway, it gets 28 miles per gallon.
Yeah.
But the M3, the M5 is just abysmal. Like when I'm driving around town, it gets, depending on how gingerly or not I'm driving it, it gets 8 to 10 miles per gallon.
I can remember driving it around town, not particularly hard, and I would get 11.
Yeah.
And that was not...
Well, and you have a lot more straightaway and a lot more
That's true.
Highway than we do.
Yeah, but 11 was kind of what I averaged in the M5.
Okay, well, the time that I've had it, it's averaged 13 miles per gallon, but a lot of that time has been on the highway.
Sure.
So driving down from New York to Georgia, where we are, so it's over 800 miles, I averaged about 17 miles per gallon.
Right.
And I was driving fairly reasonably, but I was going at, you know, I guess an appropriately healthy clip. But I have noticed that if I'm going downhill and I try really hard and I drive really reasonably, I can get up to 20 miles per gallon. Ah. But that was like
downhill with the wind behind you.
What is it? It's like hydroplaning? No, it's not hydroplaning.
Oh, the aero. I know what you're talking about.
Whatever. Yeah. I was doing everything I could to minimize my drag, and 20 miles per gallon is as good as you're going to get on that M5. David, you started to tell me earlier about how you became, or how you fell in love with BMW, and how you switched from being a Mercedes man to a BMW man, and how that came to be.
Well, the story on that is, Brent, when you and I were little, we had neighbors who had a couple of go-karts. And the Guthries. Yeah. And they had a big backyard and go-karts. And we would go over there, and I don't remember doing it all that often, but we would ride go-karts. And I think at a young age, that was the most fun I had ever had moving. Sure. And even though I crashed, I turned too fast and rolled one, scared me a little bit, but I never forgot the feeling of that kind of control. It's the first thing I ever drove, really. And so I think, you know, if you drive go-karts when you're a kid, there's a part of you that always, I'm assuming you have a good time, a part of you that always longs for that kind of handling again. So I was a Mercedes man, primarily, I think, because our dad had one. And I admired how incredibly well made it was. We also lived fairly close to the Mercedes dealership, and it was easy to go by and look at them. Sure. And they were beautiful. Yeah. Gorgeous cars, especially like the SLs, the sports cars. I mean, that was what I lusted after. But then you had a friend who had that black 325 IS. I don't know what year it would have been.
It was a 1987 E30.
Okay. And it was the closest thing, but better, to driving a go-kart. And I instantly, I mean at that moment, switched loyalty to BMW, because I'd driven Mercedes at that point. I'd driven cars because I detailed, but I hadn't had an opportunity to drive a whole lot of BMWs. There seemed to be a lot more Mercedes in Tulsa than BMWs for whatever reason. And I instantly switched loyalties, because nothing had made my heart race like that since I was a kid on that go-kart. So that was that. And then, you know, as I continued to study and look at BMW, I got more and more impressed. All through school, in graduate school, I had a poster of an E46 M3. It was absolutely what motivated me to work. I mean, when I was literally stuck on my dissertation, I would look at that poster and say, someday I'm going to have that. That's what this is for. And so as soon as I could afford a used one, I got it. Because the M represented everything that I thought BMW could really be. It was the power, it was the handling, it was the quality. It could take the beating that I wanted to give it, just like that go-kart did. Mm-hmm. And so that was how I got into BMWs and M's in particular. Just the styling on that E46 M3, just gorgeous.
Yeah.
So aggressive, but refined and unobtrusive, and I just thought it was great.
Yeah. Okay, so I get a lot of questions about this. So, you know, how do you compare the cars? Everybody's always asking me to compare the M3 versus the M5. I have a point of view, you have a point of view. I'm sure it's a little different, if not maybe similar.
Sure.
But how do you feel about the M3 having owned, you had the M3 for 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, 3 or 4. I don't remember exactly how long.
And then you had the M5 for 3 years.
Right.
And now you've had the M4 for 2 years.
That's right. That's right. Well, I mean, obviously I guess I am a good person to ask because I have had all 3. The E46.
That's not his car, by the way.
That's not my car. It's a truck. Yeah, with some dude with a cigarette hanging out that's making that noise. Yeah, we might let him get ahead. Okay, what would I say? The E46 is raw by comparison to the other 2.
Yeah.
The E46 is nimble. I wish it had better brakes, but it is it's a little race car.
Yeah.
And
it is a go-kart.
It's a go-kart, and it will take abuse and beg you for more abuse. It loves it. It's at its best when you're just driving the snot out of that thing. It was the first M car I had. I was just over the moon that I had it. So it'll probably always be in my heart my favorite M. Now, the M5, like I said earlier, is a brawler. It is a bruiser. It is the bouncer that is 400 pounds of pure muscle. And it's the E60 you've got. It's a manual. I think it's amazing that much power can go through that gearbox. I mean, it's just, you know, they had to specially design it for the North American market because North America demanded that gearbox. But it's just big. It's powerful. I think it's ideal on the highway in some ways. I'd never have seen it as a track car, though I'm sure it's amazing on the track. But it's bigger. But to have, you know, that 500 plus horsepower at your command is just a great time.
Okay, so now we're in the M5. It's for those of you who haven't seen my videos, it's a 2008 E60 M5 with the manual, and we have some passengers. We have Hannah, and we have Wes, and then my brother's driving his old car. And I thought it'd be nice to be able to have a little commentary from David about what it's like driving the M5 after 2 years of the M4. He had the M5 for 3 years before he got the M4.
It's great to be behind the wheel of it again. There are definitely differences. For one thing, this is a manual transmission, so of course it's going to feel different. It's really nice to be behind the wheel of a proper manual again. As I've said before, this thing is a bruiser. It is a brawler. However, interestingly, it's not as quick as the M4. It's got a lot of power, but you don't get it delivered as quickly as the M4 delivers it. And so I just feel in the M4 that there's a lot of speed wherever you want it on the band. This car, it just takes a little bit longer to get to it because it's not turbocharged. But it has a fantastic growl, a fantastic feel. It's very angry, and I love that about it. It's a brawler. There's no doubt about that. But the M4, I do think is quicker. I think it's faster, especially at lower speeds. Get this thing on the highway and it'll smoke pretty much anything else on the road, and certainly the M4, but at just driving around, whipping through the corners, I think the M4 has this thing beat.
Yeah, I think that's very well established and absolutely true, and the M4 has a lot more usable power. The M5 doesn't really come alive until 5,500 RPM or 5,250, and that's when it sort of separates itself from the pack. And it does it in a glorious way, but cruising around, when do you ever have a chance to really get up there and stay there? So it's really only on the track that you can use this car, at least in the States. But you know, I think this car was really designed for the Autobahn. It was designed for high-speed cruising, and in the States, we don't really get to do that. So
I think that's a really good point, actually. This car is just brutal on the highway.
Right.
And
it's an open road car.
Yeah, and this will be a lot of fun to get on this. So.
Okay.
Drop something.
It's okay.
Okay, so like right here, the M4 is faster, for sure. So I'm floored right now. The M4 is just faster.
Well, Dave, you haven't turned the M button on.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a very good point. This should change things.
Yeah, it gives you another 100 horsepower.
There is a button on the steering wheel, the M button. When you start the M5, the engine is producing 400 horsepower, which is substantial. Then you press this M button on the steering wheel, which signals to the engine management system to open up the throttle butterflies, among other things, boosting the V10's output to an astounding 507 horsepower, enough that when you step on the gas, all you can do is hold on. I believe they do this to save fuel, and really, you know, how often can you possibly use 507 horsepower at 7,700 RPM?
Now, just to be clear on the M5's power, here's what it's like with the M button pressed. So by pressing the M button, the EDC, or the electronic damping control, was activated, and so that it handles a lot better now.
Absolutely. I don't know why I didn't hear about that.
Well, no, that's because you're not in the habit of it, right?
Well, that's true.
Is there an equivalent M button in the M4?
Well, there are. You can set, there's two M buttons. There's an M1 and an M2, and you can configure it however you want. So you can have the throttle response at one of 3 different settings. You can have the steering response at one of 3 different settings. You can have shift speed set at different settings. So you program that in. So M1 for me, I just have Super Sport, you know, for everything, or Sport Plus they call it, for everything. M2, everything is Sport, but with Sport Plus, quick shifts.
So you've got the benefit of 6 years of technological development and progress.
Absolutely.
And that certainly comes through, especially on the graphics.
Yeah, for sure.
And the gadgets and all the things. I mean, that's when you get an older car. I mean, it's when you get in the E46 M3, you know, it's laughable. The graphics are so bad. The you know, even though I consider the transmission to be lightning quick, the difference between that transmission and the one in David's F82 M4 is dramatic.